Good evening. So we just wait till 8:05 to allow others to join. So kindly reach out to the rest of our colleagues to join the class. Thank you. Okay, so pending when others join, we'll just start the class. Apologies that the actual class, which is Wednesday, couldn't hold. So that's our actual schedule today. But we're going to, next week is going to be Wednesday. So it's because we missed yesterday's class. So that is why we're having it today. But next week is going to be Wednesday, same time, 8 to 9 p.m. So I don't know if you can hear me clearly. I hope there's no network glitch. So kindly respond if you can hear me clearly. Can you all hear me clearly? Okay, so very clear. Okay, so I'll continue with the class. So last time we looked at the market entry strategies, and we're going to look at them one after the other. For during this class, we're going to look at them. So now, when you say market entry strategies, you are referring to the entry mode and marketing plan to penetrate a particular market or a particular country or a particular foreign market. So you're looking at the mode and the plan to penetrate that particular market or country. So that is what market entry strategy is all about. And the entry mode is quite important because it determines the degree of a company's control over its marketing mix, that is over its product. The entry mode will determine the degree of control over the product, over the price that took place in that foreign country. It will determine the degree of control over the logistics, the distribution, channels of distribution. That is very key for any company that wants to engage in international marketing. So the logistics is very important. Channel of distribution is quite important, and promotion. So all these are called the marketing mix or the 4Ps. So you can look at it from that perspective. When you see the marketing mix programs, we are referring to the 4Ps, that is the product. So the entry mode determines the degree of a company's control over the product, over the price. Pricing strategy is quite important, over the distribution channels, and over the promotional communication mix. So that is very important. And the extent, the degree of his commitment in the target market So how consistent they will be, how, or consent will be not only in supplying the product, but also having the same content, like raw material in terms of taste, design, and the rest over time. So there are a lot of, decisions, there are a lot of, factors that one will have to consider, in the when engaging in international marketing. So the entry mode is quite important for every organization. And when you want to look at market entry strategies or decide on a strategy to use, one of the most important aspects is entry as a channel decision. So the channel decision, as I mentioned, the distribution channel is quite important, is a very important strategy that one have to consider. And here is saying that a company's international marketing channel is the part in the structure of the distribution through which product of a company reaches or reach the final consumer or user. So it's just a channel in which the product will move from the producer to the final consumer. And that is a very important strategy that an organization will have to consider. So in as much as they want to take their product to that market, how would they go about it? What would the structure of distribution be like, or what would that distribution channel be like? So that is a very important, because the distribution channel will also determine the kind of entry mode or the kind of mode that that organization will find themselves. And international marketing channel of distribution is a system composed of marketing organizations that connect the manufacturer to the final users or consumers of the product in the foreign market. So the channel of distribution here is looking at it from systems of marketing organizations that connect the manufacturer to the final user. When you talk about distribution channel, you can look at it from two different routes. Those ones are we. Okay, sorry about that. My network kicked me out. Let me reshare. Okay, so as I said, that distribution channel can be seen from two perspectives. So as I said, within the nation and also, outside the nation, between nations or between countries. So when I say within a particular nation, I'm referring to the channel distribution within a particular environment, or should I say a particular country or economy. So I'm referring to the agents. I'm referring to the intermediaries. I'm not intermediate, I'm referring to the distributors. So those are the people or intermediaries that between the distribution channel. So it's just like, let me use another word, just like here in Nigeria now, I have like a manufacturer, I have a product I want to distribute to the market. So I have to make use of wholesalers, I have to make use of retailers. And when I say retailers, I'm referring to supermarkets, I'm referring to you know, companies or hotels. I'm referring to certain companies that sell products. I'm referring to universities and all those ones. So those are my channels that will sell the product for me. Do you get? And when you talk about wholesalers, I'm referring to companies that, they sell in bulk. So those ones are within a particular channel of distribution. But when you talk about within nation, so this time around, you're referring to certain marketing organizations that will help you move that product from one country to another. And that is what that's what we call independent organizations, marketing organizations. So you can see them as independent marketing organizations that help an organization or a company to sell or move its product. But nevertheless, an organization can also have its own, marketing organizations or marketing units that, or should I say, exporting units. Let me use it that way. Let me use exporting units. Some organization have its own exporting unit that, handles that aspect. They control that all by themselves. So they control the movement from one country to another, and also watch over how it's being distributed in that international market or foreign market. So it can be seen from those two perspectives. So that is entry as a channel distribution. And in in developing the entry mode there are two aspects that a country tend to, they have to plan, they have to, involve themselves, or they have to plan towards that kind of mode. So one of it is the flow of transaction, and another one is the flow of physical product. So that is another form of entry mode in which an organization have to consider. They have to look at the flow of things that are involved when the product passes through the structure of distribution, or should I say, they have to look at the flow of the product when it passes through the distribution channel. So the first one is the flow of transactions, and the other one is the flow of physical product. And when you say flow of transaction, you are looking at the flow of ownership. And I've mentioned it previously that in distribution channel, you have to look at it from two perspectives, within the nation and also within the nation and outside the nation, or within two nations and between two nations and within a particular nation. So you're looking at flow of ownership. Do you want to have ownership of that particular product, or you want to hand over the product for someone to take ownership and continue the movement of that product? So flow of transaction, you're looking at flow of ownership, in which series of transactions are being facilitated by the channel members till it gets to the final consumer. So you're looking at how the product moves from the producer or from the organization throughout from the organization to the intermediaries and to final consumer. So looking at how the movement of goods from the producer to the final consumer. Looking at the flow of ownership of that particular product, how it moves. You're looking at how that transaction moves, or how the transfer of ownership moves from the producer to the final consumer. The physical flow here is looking at the product itself, how the product will get to the final consumer. So you're looking at the storage aspect, the physical movement of product and the rest. So from that flow of transaction and flow of ownership, is still looking at it from those two perspectives I mentioned. That is between organization, within a nation, and between two nations. So that is what flow of transaction and physical flow is talking about. So here is saying that the transaction flow, also known as the flow of ownership, is accomplished by the series of sales transactions negotiated or facilitated by the channel members that ultimately transfers ownership of the product to the final consumer. So that is transaction flow. So looking at the flow of ownership, the sales transaction that that moves from between the channel members to the final consumer, while the physical flow moves the product itself to the final buyer through a series of physical movement or storage points. So that was I'm referring to as the one within the nation, and that is where the minor logistics takes place. So that is part of the entry acquisition as channel decision. So an organization have to consider the distribution structure. They have to consider the distribution structure, and you can look at it from the transaction flow, looking at it from the channel members, the intermediaries, the movement within the nation and between two nations, how you want your distribution structure to be like, because it will also affect the kind of strategies that one thing to take, and also the distribution of that goods, or the movement of that goods when it's being ordered. So as soon as the goods is being ordered, how will the logistic be like? how is the storage of that food? Where will the storage of that food be like? So when they order, they don't have to, fly it down from that particular country to that country in Nigeria. So that is what physical flow is referring to. So let's look at another point. We're still under entry as channel decision. And here is saying that for international marketing channels, there are three basic components. So here is saying that the headquarters organization developed by the manufacturer to implement its marketing operation, the method used or the channels through which your product are sent to foreign market, that is channels between nations, and the means by which this product will reach the target, final user or consumer in the market, assuming that the importers are not the final users or consumers. So that is channel within nation. And I've previously mentioned, so you're saying that for international marketing channel system, you have to consider these three aspects. As I've previously mentioned, you have to consider distribution channels between nations. Our product are sent to foreign markets. That will determine the entry strategy. How do you want your product to enter that market? That is between nations. Also, how you want your product to get to the final consumer. That is within nation. So when I say final consumer, I'm referring to your agents, or your retailers, wholesalers, distributors. That is within the nation. That is another aspect that one has to consider. We've mentioned it before. Then the third one, here is saying that the headquarters organization developed by the manufacturer to implement its own international marketing operation. So that is another decision whereby the organization has its own exporting unit to manage all this by themselves. So that is a channel decision structure that tends to affect the market entry strategies. So here is saying that from a strategic perspective, entry mode is influenced by the international strategy pursued by the firm for its foreign venture or market expansion. And exporting may be the best international learning experience, something that takes a firm towards more and more sophistication and commitment to other modes of international marketing, such as establishing manufacturing facility in the foreign market. So an international marketing plan should include an analysis of the target market and market environment. We'll look at that later towards this class, towards the end of this class. We'll look at the international marketing plan, but that is part of the international marketing that we have to look into aside the exporting side of it. So here is saying that aside entry as a channel decision, so you have to consider entry as a strategy. So it's not only the distribution channel you have to consider when you want to enter a foreign market or an international market. You have to have a very good strategy. And the good strategy starts from understanding the target market. You have to have a proper analysis of the target market. When we look into international environment, we'll try to understand target market properly. So you have to understand the target market. You have to have a proper analysis of that market. And when I say market, I'm referring to country, that country that you want to enter. You have to have a proper analysis. You have to understand the laws. You have to understand the preferences. You have to understand the needs of those people. You have to understand the taste of those people, whether they like the taste of that product or they prefer the taste that the taste that they are familiar with in their own home country. So let me give an instance. The taste of Indomie in Nigeria and the taste of Indomie outside Nigeria is totally different. I want to use Indomie because that is what came to my mind. So those that are familiar with Indomie in their home country, or let me say home country, those that are familiar with Indomie, the Nigerian Indomie. So if they want to buy Indomie over there, they have to look at where it is being made. So that is why the Indomie over there, the Nigerian made Indomie is quite expensive because they have to export it. So export, not import. They have to export it to that particular country. So sometimes taste is very important, and it's part of the analysis of the target. You have to understand their preferences. You have to understand their tastes. You have to understand the cultural differences. You have to understand, their values to know whether that product will be accepted when it is being introduced to that country. And even if it is existing, how you can continue increasing the market of that particular economy. That is what market share is all about. How can I keep penetrating into that particular country to ensure that it is widely accepted? Because I'm sure that widely accepted is just those that are familiar with that product, meaning that if that product is coming from Africa, it's mostly Africans that are buying the product, that kind of thing. But you don't want those set of people to buy the product alone. You want others. And it can be manufacture or exporting of certain crops, of certain plants, of certain, should I say, output of certain produce. So how many countries or how many companies are actually ordering for that? They're looking at how to increase the market. You're also looking at how to increase the order. What are they using the product to do? How else can they use that particular produce? So that is part of analysis of the target market. As I previously mentioned, the market environment. One has to understand the economic environment, political environment, the social cultural environment, the technological environment, and also the legal environment is very important. These days, there are a lot of policies that are just coming on, as in, a lot of policies that are, being introduced, and a lot of, should I say, tax that is being introduced, and a lot of laws, a lot of bans that are also being, published out in that particular nation. So understanding the marketing environment, especially the international marketing environment, is very important to enter that particular country or target market. So that is another one. So for marketing entry strategy, what I said is that is important. In as much as you want to look at the right market entry strategy, you have to consider the channel structure, that is distribution channel, and you have to have a good strategy before you decide which entry strategy you one have to go for. I know there are other aspects that one have to consider, but these two are, should I say, the backbone aside others. They're like the backbones. We're also going to look at the others. We're going to look at the others, but it's very important to have those two or finalize on those two. Distribution channel is very important between nations, within nations. Between nations, within nation is very important. Or if the organization has its own marketing operation, let's know that. So it's very important to understand that and also have a good strategy on how to enter that market. Even if you're using an independent organization, you still have to have a good strategy to ensure that they follow that plan that you have. So it's very important. So now, market entry decision, as I said, aside the channel distribution, the distribution structure, aside the strategy, there are other aspects that one have to consider. And these are the others. So here is saying that the objectives and goals in the target market is very important to have an objective and goal why I want to enter that market. It's quite important. Some people I won't give example. I'm going to give an example that is outside the agricultural sector. So I'll first give an example outside the agricultural sector before I bring it back to the agricultural sector. So now let me use IKEA as example. When IKEA wanted to expand, they started in Sweden and they needed to expand their business. And what they did was to expand within Europe before they started going to other countries that is far off, like in China, other places. They have to look at their neighboring countries. So there are times that one wants to target, and they have various reasons. One of the reasons that they gave was that yes, they have similar mindsets. They are within. It's just like you saying that we are Africans, so there are still similar characteristics that Africans have, that kind of mindset. So they said, let's tap into that market first before we now go outside Europe and strengthen the market of strengthening market outside Europe. So sometimes the objectives and goals are quite important to in the target market. So for you to understand your entry decision, you have to have an objective, you have to have a goal. Why am I entering this target market? Why do I want to expand my market? So it's very important to have a clear objective and goal. So it's quite important. Then also needed policies and resource allocation. So another aspect was for IKEA was their resources to ensure that they ensured that the logistics and the movement of the goods was they needed to use that to understand the market and how to move their goods, move their product, whether they should move or they should have their own plants in that nation, in that particular country. So they use that neighboring country as to expand and also to understand the market. And it was very easy for them to enter Japan because they were able to access the European countries. And when they entered Japan, although the Japanese did not easily accept them, there was a failure. But when they came back again, when they went back to Japan, they realized that they don't like big things. They don't like bulky, long tables, long chairs, and they prefer it when it's small, petite, foldable, and the rest. And they were able to meet up with that environment. That was because they learned that lesson. So they went to Japan thinking that they are good, that people are buying it, but they did not make sales. They had to return back before they actually had to launch again in Japan. So resource allocation is quite important when you want to enter a market because that will ensure that investment does not go into waste. So if one wants to go into US, do you want to fly to Japan? Because the difference managing those two continents is quite broad. So that is where resource allocation comes in. So another one is choice of entry mode to penetrate the market. Every country has their own choice of entry mode. As I mentioned previously, that China has its own choice. Even the European Union has their own choice of entry mode. I can't say for Africa, but I know Africa too has its own choice of entry mode. Even US has its own choice of entry mode. So every country have their own choice of entry mode based on the product that one is taking to that particular country. Then control system is very important. Control system is very important, and time schedule. So time schedule is like one is engaging in project management, ensuring that the promotion runs as scheduled. The product is taken to the country as scheduled. It's not taking 1 year as expected and the rest. So time schedule is very important. That is where project management comes in that aspect. So those are the other areas or factors that one would consider or would decide before entering a particular market. Okay, as I mentioned, I brought out this particular table in the last class that apart from importing, apart from exporting, various, entry mode that one can actually consider. So we have the indirect, we have the importing, we have exporting, and under importing, we still have the direct and indirect importing. So we have the indirect importing, we have the indirect exporting and direct exporting. So now, I know I've said a lot, so let me throw it back to us. So when you say indirect export and when you say direct export, so can someone like enlighten us? Let's tap knowledge. Let's learn from others. So when you say indirect export and when you say direct export, so can you who will share more knowledge or shared more knowledge on that direct export and indirect export? So who can explain that? So anybody, let me see those that are in class today. Okay, so we have Mr. Wilfred, we have you here in class. We have Mrs. Adepoju, I hope it's Mrs. Hope I didn't mix that up. We have Mr. Hena Oro. Is that Mr. or Mrs. Olajide? I hope I'm not mixing that up too. And we have, I think, Mr. Zele Ayodeji. So let's hear from you guys. So who's going to open the floor? So when you say direct exporting, even with a slide, you can use that to, explain with a slide. When you say direct exporting, when you say indirect exporting. So who will share more light on that?
Good evening, ma.
Good evening, sir.
This Mrs. Adepoju.
Okay, Mrs. Adepoju.
Yes, ma. From my little understanding of it, I can say that indirect entry is a way of entering the international market through the use of intermediaries like middlemen. Maybe there will be a local exporter that the organization will sell to. That middleman we send we then export to a foreign country. And while the direct is just selling the product directly to foreign buyers or foreign consumers. That's how much I can explain about that, ma. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So who else is going to, explain direct exporting and indirect exporting? You can use the diagram to.
Good evening, ma.
Good evening, ma.
This is Olajide Taiwo, ma.
Okay, Mrs. Olaji.
Yes, ma. I will say the indirect is the export done by an agent, just like the diagram implies, ma. Like maybe like what Mrs. Adedoyin said, so maybe like an agent. Why the direct one is the one done by the company. That is what I think, ma.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Anybody, any other person? Okay, so we said well in explaining direct exporting and indirect exporting. Okay, Farmer Lawrence, let's hear from you.
Thank you very much, Ma. So I would like to give an example. I have a friend that does snails, and he does not have a base in UK or does not have a direct customer that is picking up these items in the UK, but he has someone who, from time to time, comes to Nigeria and travels to the UK. And anytime this person comes to Nigeria, he picks up the snails, and for him, it has counted for export because his snail can be found in the UK. Even though it's not a direct sales to an organization in the UK, but it has counted for him as export. And that can be said to be indirect export from my perspective. Then we now have say a Dangote that has a refinery here in Nigeria and sells truckloads of fuel to Benin, to other African countries, having offices in those African countries and distribution outlets in those African countries. And that for me will also count as direct export. Thank you very much, Ma.
Okay, thank you, sir, for that. Now, when you mentioned that aspect of someone that is not as if he's making use of an organization or anybody, but there's someone that takes a product from the home country to that particular market and the sales continues. So there's this word that just came to me that people tend to use I know within the SMEs world, let me put it that way, they tend to use this word as this word just escaped my mind.
Drop shipping?
Drop shipping. So aside drop shipping, there's another word called piggybacking or piggyback, let me put it that way. So whereby someone is making use of the skill of another person to, to export or to take that product out of that country. So aside corporate organizations that tend to engage themselves, so they're like the informal ways, and that big impact is also formal, whereby everybody come together and they use one person to move that product out of that organization. So it's a very good example of indirect export. So there are various ways aside these three that we have here. There are new ways to engage in indirect export aside these three that we have here. So we all explained it well. When you say direct export, we all explain both direct export and indirect export. So there's something that I just want us to, remember, that when you say direct export is the responsibility of that organization in performing that international sales or trade activities. So it's the responsibility of that organization to carry out and manage the distribution channel. So they have to ensure that the intermediaries are, they are getting the products, they are taking it to wherever you want them to take it, and so is the direct export here is saying that the organization is responsible for managing the trade activity. So they have to look at the transaction flow. And don't forget, I said transaction flow, yes, looking at the flow of ownership, how the channels or channel members move the product to it gets to the final consumer. So from direct exporting, the organization try to manage that. They manage it by themselves without the support of any other person. And from this table, sorry, 1 minute, please. Okay, so as I mentioned, so from this diagram, you can see that direct exporting, you can see storage or warehousing facilities overseas. So that company can have its own storage or warehousing facilities overseas. That company can have its own sales branch, as one of us mentioned Dangote having its own branch over there. So you can have your own sales branch over there, or sales subsidiary over there, or sales staff over there, or distributor and agent. So you have your own distributor. You already formed a partnership or arrangement with certain distributors in that foreign market. So it's the organization that is managing those trading activities all by itself. But when you talk about indirect exports, they have to engage with different independent marketing organizations, cooperative organizations, and we're in the world since COVID-19. It's not compulsory, it has to be an organization. As one of us said, snail, we've passed that era. So we've passed that era of passing through certain organizations. So an individual that has that exporting skills can engage in that. The individual might not necessarily be have an organization, but might fall under SME or just understand how the exporting market works. Do you get? So the most important thing is that that person or that organization is not handling the trade by itself. So it's passing through other services. It's passing through or is engaging or utilizing various forms of organizations or engaging with or using other services to move its product out there or to manage its product, their product out there. So as far as they're engaging with other organizations or using services to sell their products, then it is indirect export. But when they are managing the sales or the transaction flow, when they're managing the sales activities, when they're managing the distribution channel all by themselves, then they're also they fall under direct export. So that is just the difference between direct and indirect export. Okay, so now we're going to look at licensing. Although Okay, before we have advantages and disadvantages of exporting, I wanted us to go into licensing, but we just have like few minutes more. But before we do that, let's hear the advantages and disadvantages of exporting from us. I know we are familiar with all this, but let's see if I can. Let me know if I can hear you say it, if you are conscious of your advantages, because the more you reason it out, the more you try to come to that understanding that, okay, this is the reason why I'm engaging in exporting, or these are the reason why people are engaging in exporting. So why do you think people are engaging in exporting? What do you think are the advantages of exporting? And what do you think are the disadvantages of exporting? So who will open the floor? Mr. Wilfred, you've not said anything. Let's hear from you.
The advantages of hello.
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Yeah, the advantages of export. One is to increase sales of the company products. Two is to, that is for the company's product. For the country, the whole big country, is also to earn foreign exchange, and also to make the products of the company visible globally.
Okay, thank you for that. So let's hear from Mama Lawrence, let's hear from you, Mrs. Adepoju, Mrs. Olajide, and Mr. Ayodeji. Have you said something? You've actually not said anything. Have you? So there are a lot of advantages and disadvantages of exporting, but I want us to, there's a question I want to actually throw to us aside looking at advantages and disadvantages. So one of the advantages here is saying risk mitigation, increased competitiveness and market share, economies of scale, market diversification, and business risk. So I know there are a lot, but it's just a few. The disadvantage here is saying the product adaptation, political disruption, the costs, high upfront costs, cultural hurdles, and exchange rates can also be one of the disadvantages of exporting. We're going to look at this case study next class, but there's a question I want to ask. Let me throw it back to, let me ask us this question. So now, is franchising a special type of license? We're going to look into franchising next class, but let me hear your response. Is franchising a special type of licensing? Is it not? Do you think franchising is a special type of licensing? So you know you have to have a proper understanding of licensing. And we might have come across, engaged ourselves. Okay, let's hear from you, Lawrence.
Yes, it is. So franchising is getting the license by the someone who's not the original owner of a business to operate in the name, look and feel of of another business. And good examples are KFC in Nigeria. KFC is not a Nigerian company, but they have license to operate here in Nigeria. Excuse me. Wherever it is that you find KFC in Nigeria, is the person has license to operate it in Nigeria. It's not even being operated by. It's not a branch. I don't know how to say it. It's not KFC, coming to Nigeria to operate. It's someone who's a Nigerian or an entrepreneur who's gone to KFC to take a license to operate in Nigeria, to use its logo, to use its color, to use KFC's what's it called now? For the lack of the right words, nutrients, to cook their food so that it tastes the same way as KFC in London or America to taste the same way in Nigeria. So yes, it's a special type of license.
Okay, thank you very much. So who is also going to explain, is franchising a special type of licensing?
A special form of franchise. It's a special form of licensing, just like he explained. When such an individual or a company is granted such a permission, then they will be able to operate under the brand, menu, quality standards, and the likes of such a company that is letting out the franchise to them. So it's a form of licensing. If they don't get that permission, they can't operate under that name or in that form, or else they may be taken to court if they do that. So it's a special form of license, type of licensing. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, so we'll discuss in depth next class. So franchising is a special type of licensing. We'll talk about it again. So when you talk about licensing is talking about a contract between the licensee and licensor between two parties, whereby they can make use of their intellectual properties, or let me use another word. They have the right to manufacture, they have the right to use, they have the right to sell that product. So that is part of licensing. They have the right to use a logo. But that one is under franchising. They have the right to use certain services of that particular company. They have the right to, sell. It can be copyright, sell the book, sell the software. That is licensing. I will give an example of Enikin in Nigeria, as one of us gave example of KFC. So Enikin in Nigeria, they have the right to sell that product, manufacture and sell that product in Nigeria. So Nigerian breweries have the right to sell that product, and they have to keep paying a fee, either every year or every 2 years or every 5 years. They have that agreement on paying that licensing fee to the organization. They call it royalties. So they have to pay a particular fee to the licensor. So they have the right to sell the product. But anything in Ghana, based on my understanding, it's not, the license isn't given to Nigerian breweries. It's actually Guinness that has that right to sell, what they call it, anything in Ghana, and not Nigerian breweries. Only if they've given it back to Nigerian breweries to keep selling it. So just as the way with my little understanding, I know, yeah, they have the right to sell their products or sell anything in Ghana, while Nigerian brewery, they've given them that license. So the logo, the old design, it might not be the same raw materials, but they have the right to certain confidential information, formulas, and the rest. So that is licensing. They have the right to sell, to use, to manufacture certain products. But when you say franchising, so what makes franchising quite special is that, first of all, franchising do not just stop at giving out the logo, giving out the trade rights, trade secrets, giving out certain information about their products. They will not just stop there. That is a trademark, the design. They will not just stop there. Their trade secret, they will not just stop there. Licensing will not just stop there. Their formulas, design, do not just stop there. Franchising here will extend further to the business model. The organization have to, act exactly the way it is in another country. So they have to operate. Let me don't use the word act. They have to operate the way it's being operated in another country. So using Ghana and Nigeria, it has to be the same business model that they have to follow. They have to follow the same model. They have to follow the same pattern. So, and in franchising, they have total control over the operation of the franchising, because they are the ones that manage the marketing activities of the franchisee. That is the organization that wants to use the logo. So, like you said, KFC in Nigeria, they have control over it, so that to ensure that the staffs are well trained, the operations are in order, the necessary training, marketing activities are all in order, branding are all in order. Even when they're doing promo, they're running the promo activities, that same period, that same month. So they have control over the operations of the franchisee business, and they have control over the pricing. They have control over the pricing of the goods and those activities. So there are certain control that the franchisee will have, and in as much as they have control, they also release the model, trade secrets. There are certain activities that they are being protected. The government laws, the state laws, and the rest. The franchisor is the one that will act or protect the franchisee from all those kind of laws. They undo all those aspects, compared to a licensing or those that falls under licensing. So it's just that franchise is a bit broader, while licensing is narrow. So licensing is just specific, franchising is broader. So we'll look at that further again in the class. We'll try to understand what licensing is all about, try to understand what franchising is all about, then try to differentiate the two. It's just a slim line that is differentiating the two. So that's why people see it as a special type of licensing, because what is in licensing, you also see it in franchising at the same time. But what is in franchising, you will not see in the activities of those that are making use of licensing at the same time. You will not see that. But all that is in licensing, you see it in franchising. But not all that is in franchising that is seen in licensing. So that is just it. So franchising is a special type of licensing. So franchising is like the broader version of licensing. So I don't know if we have any question this evening for the before we call it a class. Any question, contribution before we call it a class?
Yes, ma. I want to ask that this transaction flow and physical flow, can we call it supply chain, ma?
So yes, they still fall under supply chain, but it falls under like channel distribution, channel structure. So the transaction flow, so let me break it down again.
Okay.
So the physical flow, you're looking at like the storage center. So you're looking at the storage center where the products are being stored, how the products will get to the final consumer. So you're looking at the goods that is within that country, within that nation. how it will get to the final consumer, where the products are. So you first of all consider the storage center. I also consider the distribution processes to get to final consumer. So you are just looking at the movement, how that product will actually get to the final consumer. So you're looking at it within the nation. They are all still talking about supply chain management. But when you talk about transaction flow, it's not just within nation. You're talking about between nation. Let me use that word, between nation. So you're looking at transfer of ownership. So whether I'm the one that will manage the goods from Nigeria to the other country, and when you get to the other country, how it will get to the final consumer. Or I have to give it to an agent that will move it over there and to get to the final consumer. So it's looking at goods between nation. That is the transaction flow. But physical flow, you're looking at when a customer makes the order, how the goods will actually get to the final user, how it gets to that consumer. That is the physical flow. So that's what physical flow is all about. Transaction flow is how I will move my goods. So whether someone will claim ownership of my goods, or I'll be the one that will still own that goods till it gets to the final consumer. I know when I talk about claim of ownership, is either the person pays your product and continue selling it, or the person sells it and pays you. Those are the ownership thoughts that one will consider. So transaction flow is looking at between nation. Then physical flow is like within the nation, how my goods will get to the final consumer when an order is being placed. So you can look at it from that perspective, or it is from that perspective. It is from that perspective.
Thank you, ma.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so we're yet to have what you call a group. I'm yet to send the first slide. We're yet to have a group. So
Hello? Hello?
hello, sir. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I have a question to ask.
Okay.
Now we hear of product dumping or products dumping via export, especially we hear of complaints of product dumping specifically from China and India, and this product dumping, they are affecting the local products in Nigeria and thereby affecting the employment rate of Nigerians. I don't really understand much of product dumping. I have an idea of what it is, but I don't have the details, especially when it comes to pricing, because we understand that the price at which products are dumped in Nigeria are far lower than what the production cost is. Please, can you explain more on this? Under which, is it under transaction flow or physical flow of marketing that we have just been taught?
Okay, so thank you for that question. Product dumping is not really direct. It's not really connected to transaction flow or fiscal flow. All organizations will actually engage in those flows, those channel structures, those channel decisions. So they will all engage in that. There's no organization that will not engage in those form of transactions, I said transaction in that distribution structure. So it's general to all organizations. Well, when you talk about product dumping, some people will see it as product dumping. Some people see it as a strategy. When I say strategy, I'm referring to cost leadership. I'm referring to cost leadership, whereby their product is being sold at a very low price, or a very low price, like as the difference between the cost of production and the selling price is just little. So some people see it as a strategy, as a cost leadership strategy, or a strategy just to sell the product, whether the product is of quality or not, because a company that is selling a quality product will not engage in product dumping. So when you say product dumping, it's like people see it as an unfair trade practices, whereby they sell at a price that is lower than the production cost or normal, market price. So product dumping is when a company is selling the product that is lower than the market price. That is product dumping. When you're offering a price that is ridiculous to other companies, so they see it as product dumping. And some people see it as a strategy. Some people see it as one taking advantage of the market. There are so many, should I say, talks that comes from product dumping. Some people see it as a strategy. Some people see it as like an unfair trade practices. Some people see it as a way to just take control of the market. They just want to sell. They just want to sell. So that is what product dumping is all about. They just want to sell. And some, they already have the product and they want to see how they can just sell everything off so that it won't expire, it won't spoil because of the cost of production. So they prefer to sell it at a lower price than for them to see that product, get destroyed with that country and be in that company, because it will turn to a total loss to them. So that is product dumping, and generally it affects exporting. It affects exporting because companies that are not producing in that kind of quantity will get affected naturally. Companies that are not involved in that kind of quantity will get affected, but it does not affect the decision whether they are going for transaction flow or physical flow. It does not affect. Most times, what people do for this product dumping is that they try to engage in certain measures, and that is where cooperatives, organization comes in to ensure that companies that engage in that kind of practices are, that they are brought to the law, they are, that they are taken to court, they are held, they are dealt with legally. You get companies that are into that. So that's what certain organizations, certain nations are being conscious of. So that's why they're a bit strict with those that are into exporting. They don't want product dumping to, be the aftermath. So they are very strict with those that are into exporting. They are strict with exporting organizations. So there are organizations that have like what I call like a commission. They have people in charge to ensure that there's nothing of such practices going on in that country. So product dumping affects exporting organizations, but it does not affect the kind of flow that is the channel distribution. It's general. But as soon as the country gives access to certain organizations, the probability of product dumping to take place will surely, happen. It will surely happen. So most times, product dumping is a strategy to organization. They see it as a strategy. They see it as a way to take control of the organization. They see it as a cost leadership form of strategy. Because in business, there are 4 different strategies. You have the cost leadership, you have the product differentiation strategy. So those are the 2 I can remember, but there are 4. So some people believe in cost leadership, whether they are selling below the market price or exactly at the production price. So that is to consider as product dumping. Some people, in order not to allow their product to expire, to spoil, to be destroyed, they prefer to sell it off lower their cost of production than for the product for them to experience total loss. So that is part of product dumping. And you see some people, they see it as a form of discount, a pricing strategy whereby they are engaging in discount. Consumers prefer that they're engaging in discount, not knowing that the company is product dumping, but the consumer, they feel it is a discounted price that they're earning. So all those ones takes place, but it depends on the nation, on the country, the market, whether they have commissions, they have, should I say, departments, they have people that are in charge of this anti-dumping or product dumping, whether they have people in charge of that. So I don't know if others have one or two things to say to that question, but that is what I can say regarding the product dumping. It's a battle. It's a battle. Every country faces that. Even Nigeria itself, it's a battle. It's a battle. So I don't know if others have one or two to say regarding the question. So, Mr.
Thank you.
I don't know if that question.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
So thank you very much. This is past 9. So I previously said that a group is yet to be formed. A representative is we are yet to have a representative for this group. So please, let's communicate within, or maybe I'll speak with the, what they call it, I'll speak with the, is it secretary to handle that, form the group. Maybe I'll speak with the secretary, but if you know you can, if there's a way you can do it within yourself, maybe you can do that. If not, I'll speak with secretary to do that. Then the group rep can continue from there. If you know you're finding it difficult to form a WhatsApp group, I'll speak with secretary to do that. I'm here to send the lecture note, the lecture slide, actually. I'm here to send that. So I'll speak with her and I'll get back to you to form a WhatsApp group for this class. So I want to say thank you very much for your time and thank you for waiting, for coming on Thursday. Our usual class time is Wednesday, but we are having it today. So next week is going to be Wednesday, not Thursday. Next week is going to be Wednesday, not Thursday. So I want to say thank you very much, Charlie. I appreciate your time to attend this class and see
Thank you. Thank you.
next
Thank you.
week.
Thank you.